Andy, thank you so much for joining us today on How I Franchise This. I really appreciate you being here. To get us started, why don't you give the audience a quick overview of who is Andy and the businesses that you've built historically?
Well, every now and then when I'm lucky enough or honored enough to give a talk, they usually introduce me as a serial entrepreneur. I started a long time ago. I'm not a young entrepreneur anymore. I'm a serial entrepreneur still, which I guess comes with age also. But I started really. I went to University of Michigan for engineering school, and then I sold air conditioning for a company called York International is what I did. And and it was at least, these large scale New York is a big building. They're called chillers, that heat and cool these large office buildings in New York. And that was my first job. And they put me through MBA school at Stern, at New York University Stern School of Business. So I was lucky enough to have that job. It was a great job. I was selling a lot. They were happy, and they put me through school. And then when I got out of school, I started my first business, which was a coffee and bar. We had an idea that these coffee bars were opening every day, so why shouldn't there be a coffee and bar? And it was a coffee bar by day, and it was a bar at night. It was called Zendo, Xando, from Xndo coffee bar. And that was my start into being an entrepreneur. My grandfather owned a delicatessen on the Grand Concourse in New York. So he was in the food business. That delicatessen wasn't around even for my lifetime, but I heard many stories. And so I ended up in I'll joke, at first the family business. I was in the food business, and it was such a great start, because the food business gives you an appreciation for how hard it is to make money. I mean, everything matters because the cost of goods sold is such a huge piece of it, in addition to the labor model, in addition to how you're going to cash flow and how are you going to put it all together. So I always recommend, the food business is such an eye opener from that standpoint. And so it was a great training for me, and it was a successful business. Eventually became Cozy, which was a coffee bar morphed into a sandwich bar. And eventually that company went public. And that's already now, 20 plus years ago. And that was my original start. And my wife and I started a business called Kidville, which was for 0 to 5-year-old kids. And same sort of story. My wife took my kid to her first mommy and me class, and she's like, "This is terrible. I had to walk down a flight of stairs and sit on this disgusting, dirty floor. How could this be what it's like?" And so we opened Kidville on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which was also a successful business, went international. And while I was doing all of those things, I had a real estate business, which was called Solos, which was part of City Habitats, which eventually got sold to Corcoran. And I just kept doing businesses along the way. And then eventually that came to Rumble, and Rumble was back in 2016, we were getting it going. So about 10 years ago now. And it was kind of like Barry's had started 20 years before Rumble. SoulCycle had started 10 years before Rumble. And then it's like, oh, I guess good things maybe come around every decade. And so, by the way, it's about a decade since I started Rumble. So here comes the pack. But so Rumble shook up the industry, and there was boxing out there when we started, but no one had made boxing approachable and sexy. I was watching a commercial for Under Armour, and Giselle was on the commercial boxing, and I was like, this is interesting. Maybe this can be not like a grimy, dingy boxing gym. It's funny because Sylvester Stallone ended up being one of our investors, but which you could never have expected, right, when starting a boxing concept. But it really made it sexy and fun. And even though group fitness was typically 95% women, we were 30% guys because it was macho, and it was worked well for both female and men. And Rumble went on to be successful. Probably as successful as you could have ever imagined until March 2020. And then we were able to sell that business also in a big win when we sold it in 2021 during COVID. but it was another learning experience. You're always learning in your life, like this is going absolutely as good as it can go. And then comes COVID. We all had to deal with it, but especially in group fitness, like group
Oh yeah.
wasn't a good word for COVID, so that flipped, and then group fitness went down, and then it started building back up, and it really has got hot again, and we came up with an idea, and that idea was, how can we do something even better than when we sort of reinvented the space for Rumble. And we were like, the world is pretty screwed up right now. A lot of people are talking about self-defense, but no one wants to do what I'll call real self-defense, right? They don't want to go in there and have a fight, but they want to learn about it, and they want it to be fun, and to much like we thought about with boxing. So we're like, hey, let's bring self-defense to fitness. And the way we did that was we created a group fitness concept. And so that it was still your workout. And that's the way we opened up, in essence, self-defense, from being like Tiger Schulman karate places to being this amazing new workout, which is the pack. And the pack, the way we did it was, it's got 3 pieces of equipment. We sort of call it our if you know who Mr. Miyagi is from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, like we call it, yes, exactly, wax on, wax off. So there's our strength and core part of the workout, which we use techno gym benches that have weights and brass knuckles and bands, because you want to be strong when you get to the self-defense section. So 1/3 of our workout is that. The second piece of the workout is assault bikes. And assault bikes are amazing for endurance and conditioning, so that when you get to your self-defense section, you've got your strength, you've got your conditioning, and then you've got it's called a body opponent bag. So instead of a water bag like at Rumble, this bag looks like a human, and you can elbow them, and you can knee them, and you can kick them, and you can box them. You can do all these amazing techniques that are, of course, when you're doing this, that's why boxing was such a great workout. Is like when you're doing these movements, it's an amazing workout. So we've put it all together, the Mr. Miyagi parts, the self-defense part. There's 3 distinct sections. So you really get 3 workouts in one. So 3 workouts in one, 15 minutes on each section. The class is 50 minutes. We've got these projections that help you follow along in addition to the trainer. Amazing music, DJ-driven music, where literally when the beat drops at certain times during our finisher rounds, so that you can build up the excitement. But net, we like to think it's an elevation of fitness over what we did in the past, and we think we've hit on everything that you and I have talked about in the past. Strength is back, so strength and core, no impact, like assault bikes, low impact, no impact for conditioning. I mean, the assault bike is no impact, very different than the treadmill, which has the impact on your knees. And then, of course, learning a skill, which everybody wants to do, as long as it's part of my workout, and I'm not in a karate class or something along those lines. So that's the evolution. I mean, I've been doing this now for 30 years. And I think the pack is my 8th business. And I'm super excited about it. And we can't wait to sort of bring it to the rest of the country.
Yeah, when you say serial entrepreneur, you're not kidding. And I've said that a couple times about myself. If I talk to a college class or whatnot, I'm not on number 8. I think I'm on number 3. And I had someone ask me, I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you. Someone was like, "A serial entrepreneur? You mean like General Mills or Cocoa Puffs?" Or like, no, not that, not that kind of cereal.
That's funny. That's very funny. That hasn't happened, but I understand where some people could say that. Maybe there's another word that's better, that doesn't have a double entendre, meaning behind it.
Entrepreneur, addicted entrepreneur, obsessed.
Yes. Well, when I talk sometimes, when you talk to young people, I always like to encourage entrepreneurship when you're young, because what do you have to lose? You could, people, even if you fail, you go back to banking or whatever. They love that you tried something, learned that discipline. It's like there's no better time to start than when you're young and you don't have the responsibilities of kids and things along those lines. So when I speak at Stern or Michigan or any of these places that have had me talk, I really encourage entrepreneurship, and I really encourage it when you're young, because of the less things that you have to worry about. And the old adage that the dumber you are, the more likely you are to go into business for yourself because you don't know all the risks. While by definition, the younger you are, the version of you is dumber than the version of you tomorrow, where you've learned something. And youth is a good time to start.
100%. I was just talking to another guest about this last week where early in your career, you have that's like childhood or your childish naiveness or curiosity or confidence, and you don't have the experience yet. So you're probably least positioned to go do it successfully, but you have the mentality that you need to have to go and start something from nothing. Versus
Yes.
when you're later in your career, you probably have the skill set to do it really well and be effective at it, and probably in a very de-risked way. But you've become so, I don't know if complacent's the right word, but you're so in the box of like, hey, this is how things are. I don't want to take that risk, and you've lost some of that childish, kind of naiveness or curiosity that I think makes entrepreneurs, successful and comfortable with taking that risk.
Yeah, and franchisees, it's just a kind of entrepreneurship, right? A franchisee is they're in it because they want to be their own boss, or they are a multi-unit, or they want to build a business, and that's entrepreneurship. A franchisee just realizes, hey, sometimes it's better if somebody gives me the tools and I operate, as opposed to having to create all those tools myself. And being a franchisor, the tool creation piece of the business, well, we all know that's hard. It comes with a lot of experience and a lot of refinement, and the franchisor part. Being a franchisee and getting that packaged information, operational tools, and focusing basically just on operating the customer service and the execution of quality control. That's why franchising is so popular in my eyes, and why it creates, a whole different set of entrepreneurs. And some entrepreneurs who've been franchisors or franchisees. It's like there's all sorts of types out there. But that to me was always, hey, give people an opportunity to own their own business, and that's what we're going to do at the Pack.
I love that, and I think something you said earlier that I didn't realize, with Zando. I mean, I think people hearing our show get curious about like the initial spark. Like what sparked Andy to become this, burning inferno of businesses and success and these huge systems that you've built. What, I guess, led you initially to say, "Hey, I'm going to leave, selling AC, chillers and doing
No
this."
one's ever said that before. Yeah, right. But okay, yes. Yeah.
What started that?
Well, it's funny. I was at Stern, and I'm in this sales job. It's like almost like an institutional sales job, because you're dealing with big buildings and management companies and architects and engineers. And I just knew I wanted to start my own business. And I was like, I'm really doing this because I want to start my own business. When I went to Stern, I took plenty of entrepreneurship classes. I eventually became a judge for 5 years of their entrepreneurship competition after a while after my graduation. But I geared my education towards, hey, what can I learn about building your own business? And there wasn't really a ton back then of entrepreneur programs. Like if Michigan now, Ross has a huge entrepreneur section. It was a little tougher, and Stern was sort of at the forefront of business schools that had a pretty good um, docket of classes that you could take that would teach you about risk, or starting your company, or what do you do legally, or all the things that you have to learn just to start the business. And so I knew I wanted to start it. And my best friend from college and my best friend from high school, were in the same position. One was a banker, one was working at another sort of institutional like company. And we said, let's find something to do. And we were having these meetings, and it was the absolute boom of coffee bars in New York City, because it wasn't just Starbucks. When it was the Wild West, there must have been like 50 competitors before Starbucks became the winner, right? And now there's a bunch, maybe there's 4, 5, 6 winners, right? But back then there were no winners. It was kind of like Starbucks was coming from Seattle, and then there was 50 different types of competitors around the city. And so we meet in these coffee bars, and we'd end up being there all day, and at night they were terrible. They were just terrible. During the day, it was great. It was fun. And then at night, just be like, the ambiance is just terrible. It's like, I still need to be here because was our office basically at the time. But wouldn't it be great if they made coffee cocktails? And that was really it. We were like, we can do this coffee bar experience. We saw this movie, Reality Bites, and something in the movie triggered between, they were going to coffee bars all the time. They went to bars. We were going to coffee bars, and we're like, this is it. We're going to put it all together. So we chose Hartford, Connecticut. One of my friends was working in Hartford for a bank, and Hartford was the perfect town. It seems like, is Hartford really the perfect town for anything, except the insurance industry. But it was great because it had a daytime population and a nighttime population. It sort of was dead from like 5 till 7 p.m. And so we were like, oh, this is great. We'll sort of turn it over. So we hid the alcohol behind these big murals. And during the day, it looked more like a Starbucks, but a Starbucks before Starbucks had, comfy chairs and stuff. We had them. And then basically the day would end and we'd roll up the mural and the liquor would become visible. And instead of just getting a mocha, you could get a mocha kiss. And a mocha kiss was Kahlua, Grand Marnier, Irish cream, espresso, steamed milk, whipped cream, chocolate syrup. It was awesome. And so it became an amazing date place, and just a place like if you didn't want to go to a shit-kicking bar, hopefully I can say that on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to go something a little more elevated and get a coffee cocktail, and we we had s'mores. And what that meant, we had like those old Chinese poo-poo platters before we customized it with the sterno in the middle.
Yeah.
And we'd serve it with the coffee cocktails and the marshmallows, and you were literally roasting them at your table. I'm not sure how legal it was in certain cities, but it became a thing. And what I've learned as an entrepreneur is it's hard to create a thing. And if you say you know exactly how to create a thing, you don't know how to create it. Things have to happen. And the public has to sort of Rumble went on, the first location of Rumble went on to do $7 million in revenues and was making $3 million at the unit level. Like, you couldn't put that in a business plan. People would have laughed you out of the room. They would have literally laughed you out of the room. But all these things came together and it became a phenomenon. And what happened at Zendo was just that. Even the name, it used to be a bar bed. Is it X and O? Is it Zendo? So people were talking about it. They were like, what's the name? And in Philly, when we opened there, they'd call it X and O. And DC, they called Zendo. It was just a thing, nothing, not a planned thing. And then, so it was a thing. And then what we were good at doing was leveraging things. Once they happened, we got a, I remember I heard Ron Shake from Panera once speaking, and when he had started Au Bon Pan, and Au Bon Pan was a big success, and then they bought this little company called Panera, and then Au Bon Pan went down, and Panera became the thing. And I remember him saying early on when it was cruising, he's like, we don't really know what we're doing right. It's just working everywhere. So we're gonna exploit it, And I was like, so there's a bit of that in it, and I'm a data freak. Like, even the very first, we opened the Pack on 23rd right now between 5th and 6th in New York, and the original Rumble was on 23rd between 6th and 7th in New York. And so data is an important part of making something a thing. And what did we do? We were looking for where do we want to put the very first Rumble, and we had no data. So we were like, let's go out and get the data. And the interesting thing in group fitness, if you're a spot driven, meaning you choose your spot, as opposed to, let's say, no choosing your spot in the class. Like at Barry's, you choose spot 54. At Rumble, you choose bag, 20, 23 or whatever. And SoulCycle, what bike number you'd want to be on. But what that did was, it was basically giving the sales away to the world. What do I mean by that? It meant, if I looked at the 9 o'clock SoulCycle class and it had 40 bikes booked, I knew they had 40 spots out of 60 sold at that time. So what we did is we built a scraper, and that scraper went out to SoulCycle's and Barry's websites every 15 minutes. And I would get a report at the end of the day, and it would rank the Barry's and it would rank the SoulCycles in the United States of America. And sure enough, the number one Barry's to this day, Flatiron, Chelsea. That's where we opened Rumble and where we're opening the Pack. The number 2 SoulCycle, and only because it didn't have 2 studios, like the Upper East Side of Manhattan had 2 actual classrooms. This had 1, was Flatiron, Chelsea. And so we're like, well, this seems like if you can build a better, or a concept that can get market share, then we wanted to open in the best market. So we opened in Flatiron, Chelsea, and not only did we get market share, we just like we're doing with self defense music, we're exposing it to an even wider range of people than we're even doing group fitness before, and
Mhm.
we're bringing them in. But so data, I think, is a big part of making your thing a thing. Um, Timing, probably the
Mhm.
most important, is a big thing of making your thing a thing. It's got to be the right timing, and then of course there's the things you can't predict, the luck factor, the specialness, the secret sauce, and so you just keep trying to elevate your product at all times because you want that sauce to continue. And basically, if somebody's, trying to knock you off, which happens all the time, you want them to be knocking off the old version of you, not the latest version of you that they haven't even seen yet, that's coming out soon, and constantly reinvention. And so I think all those things combined to making something a thing. The
Mhm.
sauce, we used to call it, the sauce.
I love that, and to your point, like, you have to there is an element of time and luck, but what I tell people is that you need to be ready for the timing and ready for the luck and be prepared, so when that moment does come, whether it's small or big, you are ready to seize it, you're ready to be dialed in, you're prepared, and then to your point, that thing may become a thing because of this thing that in hindsight or in the moment might have felt very small, but in hindsight was that inflection point that put you on the path to building something phenomenal. I'm curious for your businesses, like, was scale always the goal? Did you start everything with, "Hey, this is gonna be dozens, hundreds of locations," or was it always like, "I'm gonna start with 1 and just do, a really good job at it, and we'll see where it goes?"
Well, I think we always had a vision that we were creating a platform, but we also had the mentality that you had to get one right. And so I think it's a combination of both things, that both, sort of paradigms that you just, reference. Make sure that you have something that you think is can be, you have a vision of, hey, one of the things that I think I'm okay at is I used to like what the regular person likes, like not the super extreme person, not the extreme on this side, but like the regular person. Like a lot of people would like this same sort of thing. So like I remember like at Cozy, if we were testing a new sandwich, like usually I'd be able to be like, I think that's gonna be the winner, even if even if it wasn't the best tasting one or the best ingredients. It's just like I don't know. People are gonna like the tomato basil mozzarella that we used to call the TBM. Like they're just gonna like it, and then it would go on to be number one. Even though our people thought this one was gonna be it, or the focus group thought this was gonna be it, or whatever the case was. But I think that it's getting one right is super 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 important, and then making sure you have a vision that if you do get one right, what do you need to be doing, right? You need to be thinking about documenting your practices and procedures and figuring out what works and elevating those tools and making them simple to use so you can scale it. But I think always starting with a vision, but don't do anything until you get one right. And this is really the first time that I've had the luxury of starting a business in a similar sector. My sectors
Mhm.
were always different. So
Very.
I had to learn them each time. Although they had, similarities for how you would build the business, the sector was different. Here, it's such a great luxury. Hey, we spent a lot of time creating front desk manuals. So we've come across all the stuff that could possibly happen at the front desk of a group fitness facility, and we're starting there instead of starting where we were 10 years ago, where we had no basis and how to surround ourselves with the right people and the things along those lines. So this case, we're able to expedite our launch into franchising because so many of the tools that we had created in the past are transferable. Our mindset behind how you create those tools are transferable to the back.
Mhm. Is there anything so I agree, like, you have to get the first unit right, you've got to obsess over it, you gotta nail it, and then have, the vision and the scale in mind. Was there anything early days of Rumble that, maybe at the time felt like a small, minor decision, but ended up mattering a lot later on?
Well, it was one decision. I don't know if I would call it small, but it was the decision that I thought was going to derail our opportunity to actually open Rumble. Like we decided on, hey, maybe boxing is good to get into, and it looks like we can make it sexy and fun and exciting to want to be there. And then so I started trying boxing places, and there was one problem. And the problem was when you went to these boxing places, they had gloves for you to rent, right? Yeah. And your hands didn't just smell after for an hour. They smelled for like a day. And I thought to myself, who is going to actually do this? How do you cure this? And there was no answer really readily available. Every single boxing concept or franchise concept that was out there, or just boxing facility, your hand smelled. There was no answer. They had these glove dogs and these things that you put in them and sprays. None of it worked. Okay, absolutely none of it works because what happens is your hands get sweaty, and that sweat causes bacteria, and that bacteria is what causes the smell. And then I was an old hockey player. I was an old hockey player, and your equipment used to smell, right? And then ski boots, and people used to. They had a thing that was like they were ski boot heaters, right? Basically, because ski boots had the same sort of situation. So the ski boot companies, at mountains, they put the ski boots on these heaters. They blow air into them and they heat them. And what happens is it dries the moisture like that. And we're like, that's what the gloves are. The gloves are just ski boots. So we
Mm-hmm.
bought these ski boot heaters. They didn't have ones for boxing at the time. Now they market them for boxing gloves, of course. So we bought these ski boot heaters and we put the gloves on we went and we tested, we put the gloves after the use on ski boot heaters and they were like brand new after they go, if you take them right after class and you let that air blow through them and you dry them off, there's never any smell. And that solved the smelly glove situation. So that decision, if we didn't solve that, there would have never been Rumble. You had to be able to rent gloves because people don't want to buy and carry gloves around. So renting gloves was a really important piece of the business, and you couldn't have them smell. And so the first thing we did, we kind of made that like the iOS with Apple. We told everybody about this. We didn't need it to be a trade secret. We needed all the other boxing places to start using them so that if someone went to another place, they wouldn't be like, I'm never going to a boxing class again. Your hands smell. So we told everybody about it, and I'm sure plenty of places are using them today because we needed boxing people to not worry about having gone to another place and coming to Rumble. And so if you were a Rumble person, you never knew that boxing gloves smelled. And since so many people that came to Rumble was their first time putting on a pair of boxing gloves, they just never knew. And it was all about these glove heaters. And man, was that a system. We used to have to take the gloves. There were 60 people in the class. They'd have to go on the rack and then they'd have to get rotated so the next class would get it. Then they would have to get up behind the desk to do it. That was McDonald's operating system in there on how they get the burgers out, on how we got those gloves dried after every class. And we got the customers to not have their hands smell. But that was, if you look back and say, what was the key decision on giving us the ability to start? Yeah, it was just one decision. We don't find that or come up with that. There is no Rumble to go. And I think it's just a lesson on, hey, everything matters and be maniacal about the product. And it was just like, it was literally a real block and we got through it.
This is what I love about business is you get into these things, and I'm sure when you started Rumble, that probably wasn't something you were thinking about initially. It was, the brand and what's the course going to look like and pricing and the location. It's all these like kind of big, obvious things. And then you get into, and you're like, people's hands can't stink. This is a terrible experience. And, this would prevent repeat, customers and memberships and then to go to the other gyms and say, hey, we all need to do this because rising tides, raise all ships, and we need boxing to have a good experience and a good memory, not one where, it was fun, but my hands stunk and then I went to work. And I love discovering things like this and the creative problem solver that gets brought out of you, when these moments present themselves of what do we do here, and to come up with ski boot warmers is fascinating. I love
right. A bit lucky and figuring it out. And it's like, look, that was a key decision. I think the other key decision we got when we were going to the competition was it was hard to follow boxing combinations. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do about boxing combinations? There's only 6 punches in boxing: a jab, a cross, a front hook, a back hook, and a front upper and a back upper. That's all there is. But if somebody tells you they want you to do a jab, cross, front upper, front hook, it's confusing. And so once we solved the glove thing, we realized, hey, these other guys, confusion, like, how are you going to follow along? And that was the other negative. And so, look, Orange Theory had videos, right? And so you and I have spoken about Orange Theory in the past. They're a great company, right? They built up a massive, and they had videos to sort of help you with the one part of it, right? With the sort of the weights part of it. We went up that. We created these amazing GIFs of every exercise and every punch. And so when you were at a Rumble, you saw a jab, cross, front hook. You would see somebody doing a jab, cross, front hook. And of course, we brought that to the pack.
Mm.
So when you're at the pack, if you want to see how you're supposed to knee the bob or kick the bob or how it's part of it, elbow, knee, kick, front hook, it's all on there for you to watch. And we had Orange Share was targeting a different customer than us, so we really had to elevate it. So these very cool GIFs of
Yeah.
of how to follow along became the guide. And so one of the benefits of starting in the same sector again, well, we know we need the guide. The guide's super important. And so we've really made them incredible here on the weight side. On the, you'll have GIFs of how you're using the bands. How do you do toe touches? How do you do curl to press? And it's all there in addition to the trainer. And they're really cool the way we did them. You shoot all of our trainers. And then on the bikes, for this time, we had to do something that we didn't do at Rumble. The assault bikes are so hard. We need to give you the whole plan of GIFs before you start. You got to know what you're going to be doing on this bike for 15 minutes or you can't do it. Are you sprinting? Are you going slow? Are you doing just lower body? Are you doing upper body? Are you doing underhand grip? Are you doing back pedal? You got to know when you're going to have to go fast, when you're going to have to go slow. So on the bikes, we have these two big screens and they show literally what's going to happen for the next 15 minutes. So all the GIFs are up there at one time. And that just comes to a mentality that we created back in 2016. Okay, what's required here for the customer to have an amazing time? And so what are we going to do on the bikes? We can't flip the projections like we do on the self-defense side or on the bench side where they'll see the 4 exercises and then, okay, here come the next 4 exercises. They didn't need to know what they were while they were doing the 4, bench exercises or while they were doing the bob side. But the bikes had to show it all to them. So it's a different approach, same theory. Same theory is take the confusion out of this. It's hard enough to have the customer feel comfortable and want to come back. We can't have them confused. So that was another solve that came from doing a lot of industry classes in order to make ours the best product that we could.
And just, listening to the customer. Some people are visual learners, some people are auditory, some people are experiential. And so being able to meet people where they are, I think is brilliant. I mean, one thing I've noticed in yours and I's past conversations and the businesses you've built is I think you're one of the best like marketing slash brand minds that I've ever talked to. It's like some of these things that you see and the connection you make, the Reebok store takeover for the pack and the work that you did with Rumble and Zando. And one thing I wanted to ask you about was you've been very good at attracting very influential people to get involved in what you're building, celebrities, athletes. What does that process even look like? I think, when I think of Rumble, I think of Kendall Jenner or Justin Bieber, and how do you even begin forming relationships like that? And what's that process look like?
Well, it doesn't hurt when Justin comes, 19 days in a row in New York City to the extent that there was literally like the velvet rope, like to corral all the people that just would stand out there waiting to see if he was going to come work out that day. I mean, pretty amazing situation. I think, look, even in my very first business, we got celebrities involved, and in Kidville, like it was Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf. Like it was, is there a product that okay, back until this last business, there was no creator economy. There was an amazing celebrity driven economy. And so we sought out certain people, to say, hey, this might appeal to them. And what happened was that would have maybe appealed to them, and we found the right ones that would be attracted to it. And so you also have to find the right ones that I don't know how else to say it, but the managers and agents and navigating that whole thing is like, you have to find the ones that make their own decisions, because if not, it's an unbelievable sphere of trying to navigate it. So back then we found ones of, great people, including Stallone or Bieber, who made their own decisions and they wanted to be ambassadors of the brand because they love the product. And so on this one, once you get a track record going, like, sure, I knew Russell Wilson and Ciara and their partners in the pack, and it's because the product is something that they feel like they can put their name behind, and they're great. I mean, Russell and Ciara, they posted a video the other day of the event, and I mean, the thing goes wildfire, and that's great. And so we've been lucky in a sense that we've created relationships now over time, and that came from getting lucky on the very first one, with celebrities. Now with the influencer creator economy, like, you can't have anything better than we talked about in the past. Reebok took over our location for an unbelievable events of launching their Nano sneaker, and then you have in our room 57 spots. You have 57 influencers coming now to this class. And they're getting the Nano sneakers, and they are posting. They've got anywhere from nanos to 10, 20,000 followers to 1 million followers. And so you're getting all this UGC content, and there's nothing better than UGC and people going to their networks and talking about it. So I think managing creator influencer business and figuring out events or ways to get them to the facilities and is all part of it. And that's really evolved. Back then, it wasn't part of the business, meaning there were no influencers and creators. It was celebrities and models. We knew we had one at Rumble because all the other places were trying to give the models free classes to come. And instead, we were getting contacted by the models and their representatives asking for the complimentary classes, and they could come. We're like, we won. We've got this going. They're asking us instead of us asking them. And so it's the same sort of strategy here, where it's like, we're getting a big influx of people that are, asking us as creators and influencers, saying, hey, can we come? I'd love to create content in there. Now there's ways to compensate those people with free classes and retail and things along those lines, so that it's a win-win for everyone, because that's the creator economy. And so we've sort of just evolved into the creator economy and doing so many things with different influencers and creators and events and ones that work for our brand and work for their brand also. So we've been lucky. I had a partner at Rumble who owned the Catch restaurant chain, and he knew a ton of celebrities through the restaurant business, and he was very influential. Eugene Rem, very influential in bringing some of the celebrities early on, and then that mushroomed on itself. And I've been lucky enough to be able to have celebrities and influencers and involved in every one of the businesses that I created.
And I think, without going into detail, I think a lot of our audience is interested in, like, how do things actually, work like this? How do you structure a deal with a celebrity or an influencer? Is it equity? Do they invest? Are they, again, without going into a specific example, how do you typically structure a deal like that?
Well, I don't think there's any one way to do it. There's some places. I'm an investor in Sip Margs, and Alex Earl, she's the spokesperson, and she owns a big part of the company, and she should. She's it's a big, huge sort of deal. So there's that type of deal where you're creating a large relationship, so structured relationship. And then there's all the way down to influencers and creators, where you have a currency. What's our currency? Our currency is classes. All of these people love to work out. So we have this currency, and by the way, it's not so cheap to go to work out all the time. So we have this incredible currency that's in demand for a whole set of influencers and creators, and this incredible retail line that we have of clothing featuring our three-headed Cerberus, which is my partner Noah Neiman's dogs, and Noah's really the face of the pack, and so he created an incredible brand where the three-headed Cerberus is based on his three dogs, and one each, and one head stands for each modality. But so we've got currency, we've got retail, we've got classes, and of course, yes, we try to get them as investors. But in my case, we always do deals where the celebrity is or the influencer's putting up hard dollars, in addition to maybe getting some influencer optionality or something along those lines,
Yeah.
so that they're really invested in the brand. So I don't, a lot of people do. Some people like deals that are just paid performance deal. I haven't found success with those type of deals. Ours were always have somebody get a vested interest, own equity in the business, find a way to get them involved if it's at that level, and that's where the win-win. Then there's no paperwork about what the responsibilities are for what's doing what they want to do. Like, Justin Bieber didn't have to post about Rumble; he just did. And
Yeah.
so those are things that I think are part of it. So I'd say if I was coaching young people, it's a wide range. There's many ways to do the deals. There's your product currency. There's ways to get them invested in the business. Hopefully there's a way to get them invest so they have hard dollars in and care about it more than just like a job or some kind of paid partnership. But so in today's world, I think you have to look at all of those various ways to do business, because the creator economy, man, that's evolved so wildly in the last 10 years since I started Rumble. It's there's even platforms that give you the ways to sort of share equity and to share currency with them. So that is, I think, a directed effort is what you're looking for when trying to work with celebrities, influencers, events. Make it a win-win. It should be a win-win. It can't be a one-sided deal for anything. You have to make it great for that person. What's in it for them? And so that's like, even like when we know those creators want to be on our Instagram, or Rumble had 200,000 followers or whatever the case is, and we're building that same thing with the package. They want to be on it. So reposting is the simplest form of currency. Putting somebody's post on your platform is an amazing currency. So I'd say all sorts of deals, no rules. My 2 cents is try to avoid the ones where you have, so many advisors and managers and agents, because those are just harder to do. Not impossible, but just harder. And so we like the scale, and we like the idea that, so many influencers, creators contact us and say, hey, I'd love to start coming, and here's my audience, how can we work together? And
Yep.
so today I gave you a few ways that we might do it. It's all about levels. Somebody have 40 million followers? Do they have 40,000? Both are important.
Yep.
Both are
Yep.
super important in this world because of the way UGC and credibility works. And so I think that's all part of it.
Yep. Well, Andy, so you've taken a company public, you've taken another one international, you've had a 9-figure outcome to exponential with Rumble, and now you're saying, hey, I'm coming back for more with the pack. It's in a space that you know a lot about, you have connections in. You shared earlier that you're starting to talk about franchising the pack, this amazing, revolutionary program that's different. It's bringing self-defense in a fun way to the world. What made it feel like now is the right time to franchise?
Well, you and I have talked about this a little bit, but we're getting such an incredible amount of incoming interest. We think people want things. They want something great. They're always looking for something that could be sustainable. So the first and foremost thing is the inbound attention we're getting from franchisees and multi-unit developers saying, hey, I want this and I want this now. And we would never have been able to launch franchising had we not been in the business beforehand and understand the business. And so it's all of those things sort of put together is what's driving us into franchising. Now, we're going to break some of the rules in the pack. What do I mean by that? I like to think about all the brands that I've created and the consistency and what's the brand ethos and how does that come across? And normally that means it's always has to look a certain way, or the brand the classroom has to be delivered, or it always has to have locker rooms would be an example, or it always has to be something specific. And I think in the pack we've developed something that's very, very portable. So we've got 3 core pieces of equipment, which is our Technogym benches, which are on wheels and have our weights in the hands and everything that you can do on a bench and standing next to it. We've got our body opponent bags, which are the bobs, where you can elbow, knee, you can kick, you can punch, you can do so many great self-defense things, but it's very portable. And our assault bikes. which are for endurance. We've talked a little bit about our Mr. Miyagi sections. It's the bikes give you the endurance and conditioning for when you get to the self-defense section. The weights give you the strength for when you get to the self-defense section. But the self-defense section is fun. It's super fun to throw an elbow or to throw a knee, and while you're learning a skill. But all of that equipment is very portable. And what I learned during COVID was I used to go to SoulCycle outside, and outside had none of the branding. It had none of the classroom. It didn't have the candles. It didn't have the go wording on the walls. It didn't have the lighting. It didn't have anything. It was just the bikes and the instructor. But the product transcended, the brand transcended the classroom. So in my vision for what's going to happen with the pack is, if in your market you need to build one and it needs to cost, I don't know, $100,000 because it's really just the equipment and the projectors, or you're even doing it outside, from that standpoint, this brand and this product is going to transcend some of the brand elements that maybe in my past I would have thought were critical to scaling and chaining the business. Here, you want to have a fancier one because you want locker rooms. Your market demands locker rooms. You want to have an indoor facility. You want it to be a super ambient with the lighting and the darkness and the way it's going to work. You have to spend money on soundproofing because you want to put it in a building that you can't have sound emanate from it. Well, that's one set of type of a pack that you'll be able to build, and that'll cost more money. But if you want to do one, I'll just use the extreme of outside. You can do this class outside with screens and projections to help you follow along. We have these amazing projections that help you follow. Sure, you need those to deliver the product. And you need the equipment, but you need the way we deliver it. You need the music. The way we do the music transcends any classroom. It's the right mix of hip hop, house, throwback, and commercial with drops at the right time. So the instructor knows when the drop's going to happen. The crowd knows when the drop's going to happen. There's the brand elements that we're going to have no matter where you put it. But the idea that it has to be a cookie cutter approach and always look the same in every market, I think we're going to be much bigger than that. And I think we have a platform that's wide, and the cost can be wide. And in franchising, cost is important. What's the input cost that the franchisee can spend in order to get the one off? And of course, it's going to have to live to our brand standards, but our brand standards are not going to be, hey, you have to have locker rooms, or hey, you have to have soundproofing here because maybe you're going to put it in some freestanding, or hey, you have to have a classroom that has these design elements. The brand can be delivered in many different ways. And one way, of course, is the music and the logo, which will transcend it. The way we're going to dress up the Bob, so he's always branded. Like these are things that where the brand transcends the four-wall environment. And I think for that's going to mean a wider range of people that'll be able to deliver this product. And I think that's what's going to make it really powerful for scale.
Yep. And I have no doubt with your track record, with Noah, I mean, the team that you've put together, the results, the impact you're already having in a short period of time. I think anyone listening that has interest in fitness concepts and franchising, I mean, watch out for the pack and keep an eye on what you guys are building and what you're doing. Before we wrap up, and Andy, thank you, again, so much for being here. I want to test this kind of new section we're going to do. I'll call it crazy numbers for now until I come up with a better name. I need your brand expertise. But we as a team are always talking about our guests and, what kind of interesting thing have they accomplished, or a number that's associated with what they've done. And we were thinking about you and Rumble, and we started crunching the numbers, and we realized that at the stage and the scale that Rumble is today, you are helping society burn over 500,000 pounds of fat per year. And we were looking at members and calories, and we feel pretty confident. I mean, what a wild accomplishment. What an awesome accomplishment to help people be healthier and have fun while doing it. So I wanted to share that.
That's a great stat. It makes me feel very, very lucky and useful. And
then the last two quick hitter questions. As you think about franchise brands, do you have a favorite outside of your own?
Well, look, I think it's hard to say that you have a favorite, but I am impressed with so many. Starbucks was always my number one brand. And of course, they were company owned and sort of franchised and licensed internationally. But what they did to take an industry and elevate it when it was, how are you going to get somebody to pay, $4 for a cup of coffee when it used to be 40 cents? And so much went into that, right, was the quality. Well, they had to change the quality wildly. They had to change the experience and make it a third place where you felt good about going in to get your cup of coffee and it felt okay sitting down there and making it a third place. And then, really as Starbucks evolved, they just found ways to stay relevant. Eventually, originally it was dark roast and you couldn't drink light roast. And then they realized, hey, we got to get wider. So now we have a medium roast and we have a light roast, and that's okay now, whereas maybe it was taboo, but impressed with the way they evolved to meet, like you said earlier, to meet the customer where the customer is. I just love what they did over time in building a success of a brand. So they're probably my favorite multi-unit operator, even though they didn't, really franchise in the US. They do, of course, internationally.
Mm.
They're one that I probably admire as much as the other one. And then I had this other mentor, and I was lucky enough to meet and know Howard Schultz along the way. And I had this other mentor who passed away a while ago, but he owned Subway, and he had done things the exact opposite. Fred DeLuca, he had done the exact opposite. He had, it was really this level of product. And then he said, I'm going to go into sandwich, but I got to make this product special with inside, the sandwich zone. And he did it, and he did it in an incredible way when, you could get a sandwich anywhere. And Subway was really the first ones to go wild. And of course now Jersey Mike's and things along those lines. But it was good to know Howard Schultz, who taught me all about, corporate owned expansion and stuff like that. And Fred, who taught me a lot about franchising and how you do it. And they were on opposite ends of the price platform and, high end and low end. And so I admired both those guys, and I admired those brands and what they did with them at that point.
Multiple ways to get to the same outcome. And one fun fact is, we've been doing some of our franchise research. Magic Johnson actually had franchise licenses for Starbucks really early on. They had at one point contemplated franchising the United States as well. And I think he's one of maybe one or two people they gave licenses to before they stopped it and said, we're not, we're doing it all corporately owned.
Yeah, Magic was making too much money. He was making too much money. So they realized, hey, let's just keep doing it ourselves. Yes.
All right, last question before I let you go is, what is the most underrated skill for an operator?
I think tenacity is probably the one you need the most. There are going to be bumps in the road. I don't care what you do, and you have to be able to navigate them. I consider myself very lucky because I was able to navigate them, in tough times, and navigating them is the biggest, I think, thing you need to have as a skill, meaning you got to believe that there's always going to be a way that you can figure out what the bump in the road is and how you get over them. So I think tenacity is probably the one that I think is you need the most, because you need it in those times when things aren't going exactly right. And that same drive when things are going right, well, sure, it's much easier, but when it isn't, if you have that tenacity to say, okay, like, we've got to solve this, we've got to pivot, we got to figure it out, I think that's probably the number one.
Andy, thank you so much for being here. Anyone listening, if they want to find you, the pack, anything that you want to direct the audience to.
Yeah, it's wethepack.com. On Instagram, it's @thepack. Feel free to DM me directly if you want. I'm Stenz18. I try to respond to everybody. It's tougher, but on LinkedIn or on it, I know tons of people helped me on the way up. And so I try to give back as much as possible, and I'm involved with a bunch of brands that I'm helping. One's a new called Saint. It's a new cold plunge and sauna personal space type model where they have personal areas as opposed to groups. So like I've gotten involved with people and tried to help them, when approached. So feel free to shoot me a DM.
Awesome. Andy, thank you again so much. I appreciate all the time you gave us and advice, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.